check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to sell everything and travel the country at the tender age of 50? Well, with our last kid off to college and the ability to now work remotely, we've decided to do just that. So we're selling the house, loading up the dog, and hitting every city from California to Florida. We're scouring the country for a new place to call home and dragging you into every restaurant, Airbnb, and tourist trap we encounter along the way. This is the Skip Town All-Stars podcast.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the podcast. We are starting a new adventure in our lives. We're glad you are here for the ride with us, the literal ride. We're going to take a lot of rides, hence the name Skip Town. We want to be all-stars. We think we're pretty good at it so far. We'll see how good we are once we actually hit the road. Our story in a nutshell is we are about to be empty nesters in the next several weeks. To tell you a little bit more about ourselves, I'm going to let my wife Denise start us off.
Hi, I'm Denise. I've been living in Los Angeles for about 27 years. I moved here from Chicago, Illinois. I came here with the hopes and dreams of working in the music business, and I did for several years. I then had a daughter and then had two more very quickly, it seemed. I had three daughters under the age of 5, what seemed like no time.
What she's leaving out right now is allegedly all three of these daughters are also mine.
They are. I met James.
She's sticking to that story.
I am. I met James here in Hollywood, California. Legitimately Hollywood. In Hollywood, we were at a bar.
Largo.
Cafe Largo, which is actually the middle name of one of our daughters in commemoration of meeting there. So, yes. So I had 3 little ones under the age of 5 quite quickly, and became a house mom for a little while. Then started working as a personal assistant for several families in Beverly Hills. It was a great part-time job that allowed me to take my kids to school, bring them back, and make dinners for them. Then as of the past 7 years, I started doing permanent makeup, which is beautifying the face with tattoos for women. I know it sounds crazy. What woman is going to get a tattoo on their face? But they do, and they pay a pretty penny for it, and I'm very good at it. So
She is.
I own a day spa here in Los Angeles, and that is what I have been doing up until a few weeks ago when we decided that we were going to sell our home and take it out on the road and try to find a new house, new home, or whatever it may look like for our family. So this has been in the works for quite some time. I'd say for the past 4 years we've been chatting about it, but then we actually did it. So we really did sell our home. We told our friends for quite some time we were going to do this. I don't think anyone believed us.
They didn't believe us. They absolutely did not believe we would do it.
So yeah, we sold our home. So right now we are in the process of figuring out where we're going to go.
I'm James. I moved here about 25 years ago. I met Denise a few years later. I still wasn't entirely sure I was going to stay in LA at that point. But I had just become a production assistant when I met Denise. I wasn't in a great way in terms of consistency.
You were fine, Sop. You were fine. It was fine.
Now, the night I met Denise, I was waiting on a paycheck to arrive in the mail, if you remember.
I do.
And I almost wasn't there that night to meet you.
It is true. Thank goodness the mailman was on time.
Without that money, we would have never met. So, grateful for that. But after that, I started working in the television industry. So I wasn't spending a lot of time at home. And she was raising our oldest daughter by herself. So long story short.
Literally single mom. People thought I was a single mom. I would go and have breakfast with her every morning at the local diner. And all those ladies were like, oh, she's doing this all by herself.
She wasn't, but it seemed like she was, and I needed to make a change. We had a friend who offered me a position sort of running a post facility since I had already been doing the managerial stuff.
What's a post facility?
A post facility is basically an office where there are several different editing rooms all cutting different projects, commercials. I was personally overseeing a huge contract for a bunch of infomercials at the time, so it was really sexy stuff. The downside to that story, though, is I took a $60,000 pay cut, and so my wife went from crying that I was never home to crying that we were probably going to lose our apartment if I didn't figure out something really quick. So
That is true.
suffice it to say, the red light was going off, and in the end, it worked out. I mean, I needed to boot my career. It wasn't even a reboot at that point. I hadn't been doing anything for particularly long. But in the end, it worked out. And 22 years later,
You are a full-fledged.
I'm a full-fledged editor. I have about 110 credits to my name. A lot of competition reality shows. If somebody's getting eliminated or crying and being sent off an island somewhere, chances are I've touched that footage. So now, one of the things that's really inspired us to like take this jump, sell the house, is that I don't have to go to an office down in Hollywood or sit in an hour's worth of LA traffic each way anymore.
We love it here, but we knew that we could never retire comfortably. LA is very expensive, and he makes good money, but we are not millionaires. We're not even close to it. So we had to figure out a retirement plan for us that would allow us to do the things that we like to do. We like to travel. We don't want to just sit in our homes and be cash poor because we have a fixed income now. And our daughters could never come back here and buy a home of their own. They could. Oh gosh, but what would that look like? What would their careers be? Like, they couldn't be a teacher or a social worker or even an accountant. I mean, maybe an accountant, but honestly, they had to have a very high-powered job for them to buy a home here. All of that to say, LA was not the place for us to live together. We want to live within blocks, maybe a few miles. It wasn't going to be here. So we had talked about this for years, and then in 2019, we had discussed how to pivot our careers. I could pretty much do what I do anywhere. But at that time, James could not. He is a television editor. His employers wanted to see him in the office. They pay you a good dollar. They physically want to see you. He had asked people several times, can I do this job from home? Can I work remotely? And the answer was always no. So in 2019, we had several discussions about what could he do? Sure, he could be an editor in a town overseas or in a town, a few states away. But it wouldn't be with the money he's making now. He could be an editor maybe on a local news show. But what could he do to make the money he's making now? And after considering it and talking about it, he had mentioned coding, computer coding. He's really good at computers. He knows it inside and out, and he enjoys it. So computer coding, well, heck, you can actually do that anywhere. But then the pandemic hit in 2020. So all of our thoughts of him becoming this master coder kind of fell by the wayside, because what ended up happening, and we were just honestly very fortunate and blessed, there's no other word for it, is that his job in 2020, where every other editor in this city was told to stay home without a paycheck, he got very lucky that his employer at the time needed him to finish his job so they could air it on Netflix.
I was one of the lucky ones at
that was
time.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, so
for a few months, I was one of a handful of people that I knew that was still working. Eventually, the industry caught up and they pivoted, and as they do, and all my friends went back to work. But I was really one of the fortunate ones early on that just happened to be on a show that was finished shooting, but it had been edited yet. So
when the shutdown happened in March of 2020 and everyone was told to go home and stay home, his employer, when I say people, his employer was sending him computer equipment to remotely cut this show from home, because their goal was to have it air by the summer of 2020. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, in so many ways, because everyone else was out of work, didn't have a paycheck coming in, and we were just fortunate to have a paycheck coming in, because obviously I'm in the beauty business, since my business completely shut down. Mm-hmm. And then what that taught us and his employers, he's a freelancer, was that we have to figure out a new way to work remotely. So it was really the pandemic that shifted everything for us. So the change of career no longer had to change. He could actually stay an editor, make the money he's making, but we could live anywhere. I mean, it opened up possibilities that we had not ever had before because it wasn't possible before. Everyone told you no, you couldn't work remotely. So now we are in a situation where everyone is forced to work remotely. But with all that being said, we both had to think about how long this was going to last. So when 2021 rolled around, neither one of us knew if they were going to call him back into the office. In fact, we both had a sinking feeling that they might. But then it all took a turn when he said to me one day, "Hey, you know that company so and so? Well, they sold off all their office space, and they were a big employer of his."
And then another one popped up, and then another one, and pretty soon people were selling off or reducing their real estate footprint just so that their core production staff, their producers, the executive producer could go into the office if they wanted to, but they didn't have to keep 10 edit bays to cut a competition reality show anymore, when they could just basically stuff all of those computers, all those edit bays into 1 or 2 rooms.
He was also hearing, like, he would tell me, "Oh my gosh, this producer is working from Wisconsin. This editor is working from Portugal. Somebody on a big show, like we're talking a really big name show, is working in Boston." So when he started hearing like murmurs of that, that really, I mean, I'm talking for you, but I can say it shifted it for me, where I knew for sure that he could still be an editor anywhere else in the country or the world for that fact. So why are we going to stay in LA now? As soon as that baby graduates high school, like my thought was, we're really legitimately out of here. Like, forget the coding classes. Like, we're gone, and you're going to just continue what you're doing as long as you have a laptop.
So far, so good.
But we did take that idea on a few test runs. So let's tell them what we did. Okay,
so when I was hearing those murmurs, and when my family was finally at the point where they were going to have emotional breakdowns, because we were careful during the pandemic. We live in LA. It's a city with 11 million people. We had already done I had already had a miserable sourdough experiment. I had already, Denise had made every cake in the cookbook at that point. And
we took road trips to go see the poppies that were an hour away. I mean, I really tried to keep them busy. They still had online school, but there was a lot of downtime, and those weekends could turn into really long weekends. So cut to September of 2020, we decided to take our little idea of a remote working on the road. And we booked our very first road trip, 3 weeks from Los Angeles to Washington. So that meant a few days on the road going there, 10 days in Washington, and then a few days on the road coming back. We weren't going to rush it.
No, we weren't. We would hit cities along the way. That was the first, despite living here for 20 plus years, Denise and I had never been to the Redwoods, never been up Avenue of the Giants, any of those beautiful places that Northern California has to offer, just so scenic. And that was a thrill. We stopped off in a cabin, and when we rolled up that night, we realized quickly we were out in...
It was like Jason.
It was a lodge.
For all of you who know Friday the 13th, it was literally the Jason cabin.
It was a plywood lodge, and there were no restaurants open when we pulled in after dark.
That was a bad call on me. It's fine. Lesson learned.
We had a few sort of bad but good adventures along the way, and quickly as we started sort of climbing the coast of Oregon, I realized, I had to get a few things uploaded for work, and I remember distinctly being really dismayed at a particular hotel we stayed at, and it was Bandon.
Yes.
And the hotel was great, but it was actually a motel, I guess, right? technically.
You're right. It was a
because there were
motel.
little tiny
Yes.
chalets sort of lined up along the beach. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. But the-
Horseback riding on the beach. We saw people
Yeah.
horseback. It was incredible. But we did learn one really important lesson, and that is how necessary strong Wi-Fi is.
Yes, for sure. It was brutal. I was just trying to upload, I don't know, maybe a 10 gigabyte file or something like that. It chugged all night, and I woke up like red-faced panic in the morning because something had happened. The upload had failed, and well, that something was our Wi-Fi was horrible. So
Cut to
me kissing the kids good morning.
in like a sweatshirt.
Yeah,
Over. It was
and
so
going
chilly.
to a coffee shop in Bandon. You
Sitting
couldn't
outside.
You couldn't stay inside because
No.
it was still the pandemic. So, but there were picnic tables outside, and I basically ordered a cup of coffee, poached their Wi-Fi, sat at a picnic table, and prayed it wasn't going to like mist or rain or sprinkle or anything like that. But in the end, it all worked out. The minute that everything was uploaded, my people were happy, and the next thing you know, we were on our way up to Seaside. And
Yes.
that went a little better. We had faster internet at that hotel, if I remember correctly. So
And that was a hotel. And
Yeah.
and then when we got to our Airbnb, he was sweating it out a little bit because there were specifics, I guess, that like now we know to ask.
Yeah.
And so that was our first foray. And so I don't know speed, but I can assure you on our fourth try, because it was our first one. We went to Chicago at one point. I knew exactly the speed to
Yeah.
ask for. So so that one he was a little nervous. Like, is this internet
Yeah.
and the Wi-Fi at this home that we Airbnb'd in Washington, is it going to work?
so beautiful.
But it did.
It was worth it. It was so worth it. The kids really enjoyed waking up every morning. This place was cozy. And obviously Washington's a little cooler than Los Angeles. So they really loved taking class in their little snuggly slippers and the furry blankets and everything at this place that Denise picked out, an amazing place for us to stay. And it did light a spark for us. I mean, since that time, since that first trip, I can say I've worked in about 10 other cities just in the last 2 years. So the whole working remotely thing has been more and more refined with every city that we go to. So that's been fantastic. I mean, I've worked out of Boston. I've worked out of Boise for 9 days, right outside the foothills. So I could just start hiking up the mountains at the top edge of Boise for a while. And that was great. I got to visit my oldest daughter there. I've worked out of Salt Lake City in Utah, visiting our other daughter who's
Had a
in
slight
school.
problem in Salt Lake with the
did.
Wi-Fi,
I
and
had a hitch.
that wasn't on me either.
No, it wasn't. I booked that trip myself. I did. So I did have a situation, and I don't want to. It's our first episode, so I don't want to get too gear heavy. But I will be spewing some information here and there for people who are like me, who need a little bit faster internet to do their jobs as we go. But suffice it to say, I had to call one of those day workspaces and pay the $80 to go in and actually do my job that day to prevent from. Let's just say the $80 I spent was worth it because I didn't lose my job. So,
Yay!
so that
happy
was
about
good.
that.
Like props for that. Props to them. But that was the same week where I also worked out of a hotel in Boston, and it was amazing. I mean, I've done all these things now.
Chicago. We
with
did
my
Chicago
kids.
for 10
Yeah.
days.
I've seen so our youngest plays volleyball. I've been to all of her major tournaments. She played on a really great club team, national champions. Salute.
Plug, yeah.
Salute. Sunshine Volleyball Club, if you're in LA. Anyway, so, I've gotten to see Celtics games. I went to see the Jazz, which incidentally, I was able to take my daughter and 6 of her friends for the same price to a Jazz game that I would pay to take a buddy and myself just to see the Lakers play.
I know.
So,
We're going to talk about LA prices though.
that
later.
was great. We'll do that later. I'm getting off track, I know. So what we're about to do, which I guess is really what we should start getting into at this point, is we are going to take those trial runs and make it real.
We are. So since he was able to make it work and he was able to keep his job and have those uploads in a timely fashion, we know now he can work anywhere. So as much as we love Los Angeles, and we both have lived here for 25 years. I've lived here for 27. I lived in San Diego 2 years prior to that. But anyway, living in Los Angeles for as long as we have, we love it. I mean, we obviously there are things that, like any city dweller, you have things that annoy you or bother you or wish weren't part of the city. But overall, we've lived here for 25 years. If it was more affordable and our daughters could live near us, we would stay. But those two things have given me the desire to move. Now, I know that James has his own thoughts on that. So, okay, when people ask me why I'm moving, I can always tell them the two reasons I just stated here. I can't retire here comfortably, and I want my daughters to live near me. But for you, what is your why? Like, why do you want to leave? Because would you stay?
I just want to run. Like the pony wants to run. I just want to get out. When I was a kid, we lived on sort of a big plot of land, and there was a highway that ran through half of it, and I would just stand there at the fence, like with my friends, smoking Marlboro Reds, and like kind of saying, what are you gonna do? Oh, my dad's gonna give me a job, or I'm gonna go sell insurance with my aunt, or what have you. And they would always ask me, what are you gonna do? And I would just say, I'm getting out of here, and so even after I got to LA, I decided, well, yes, I think I'm going to work in Los Angeles for a while, but I always had that bug when people were saying, oh, I'm going on a shoot, it's in Nevada for 3 weeks, or I got booked on a show in Yellowstone or wherever, and I was like, oh my God, that's the life for me. So to sort of be where I am now and think about how for 25 years I've lived in the same place, it's just kind of a head scratcher, because I've always been like, let's go. And I'm fortunate that you like to travel. I mean, if you were the type that just wanted to do martinis on Friday night, and which is all fine and good, and sort of renovate a room in the house or whatever on the weekend, I don't know. I mean, I would feel a little oppressed, probably.
It's interesting because my family never traveled. I never grew up in in even an extended family that traveled. I mean, getting on a plane was so extravagant growing up. Only wealthy people did it. So for me to want to do this is interesting for myself. I even think about that. Like, I think to myself, what has made me want to do this? Because I'll go on vacation with James. I'll go on vacation with the kids. But I don't know if I particularly have ever been that person that has said, I want to go here, I want to go there. I mean, even in our years of being together, I don't think I've ever said that. I don't generally even watch travel shows, but there was just something about the idea of exploring the world that was so enticing. And it wasn't scary. I feel like that at our age, we're still young enough to do the things that we can't want to do. I don't know if we can at 65. I think that the age we are right now, we're still healthy enough. So the idea of traveling the country and the world isn't daunting. It isn't. It's not daunting at all, especially for myself, who I've never even thought of like doing something like this. I really haven't. I like to go on vacation. I've been to Europe twice. I've gone to Hawaii. I've been to Mexico several times, but it's just never been a thing. I don't watch the Travel Channel. I can't stress that enough. I don't ever watch it. So what am I doing on this trip around the world?
Well, you don't want to do it vicariously. I mean, that's the point. It's like you want to do it for yourself.
It's funny because a friend of mine told me about a show, and I cannot remember the name of it, but I'm sure when I mention it right now, people will know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's a show where you go to other cities and as Americans, and you can rent an apartment or buy a house. It's international something. That show actually made me feel like James and I could do this. And that was years ago. I mean, I think I watched it a few times, and I thought we could do that. As long as we're both making decent money, why couldn't we do that? So all of that to say, for me not being a traveler, but wanting to live in a place that I can have my kids nearby and I can retire affordably, and him being a nomad, Here we are. Here we are. Skip Town All-Stars.
That's it. So this is our shot, and we're taking it. We've had a lot of people tell us, especially over the last 2 months, as our plans became more and more public, how much they admire what we're doing, how sometimes they're a little bit jealous of what we're about to attempt. And there were a few people that just told us we were outright nuts for even attempting it. But we have one shot to do this. We feel like we're, where we can do it at the age we're at the, sort of in the financial picture where we're at. I guess this brings us to what the trip is going to look like for our listeners. We're going to be dragging you along Seattle to the Keys. So we don't know where we're going to end up. When people ask us, hey, I heard you sold the house. Where are you guys headed? We say we don't know. And they look at us.
It's true.
At first with shock
Crazy.
and then bewilderment because they're like, there isn't a plan. And we're like, no, I mean, we know what we kind of want in our next hometown. Maybe, do we? I don't know.
I don't know. We have an idea. Like, I have an idea. Like, you know what? If anybody's ever watched Gilmore Girls, I keep saying I want to live in Stars Hollow. Yeah. I keep saying I want to find Stars Hollow. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, all I know is I want to live where it's like, okay, I'm going to say this right now, but it could very well change. I want to live where it's slower paced, where everyone knows your name, where I could have a breakfast for $10 for one person, if that's even possible, which I think it is. I don't know, where I just love where I live, and I'm happy when I wake up every morning.
All right, well, I want to live where it's all sexy people. So we're going to have to navigate those two thoughts, I think.
We could find that. I'm sure we could find that.
We can find Gilmore Girls meets, I don't know. Anyway, so we have to get our youngest up to Seattle. That we have to do.
Yes, so we have a hard out. So our hard out is to have her in school by the date she is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question that we should probably discuss, which everyone asks us, is how are we doing this? I mean, physically, how? Like, are we driving? Are we flying? Yeah. And then the how did you do it financially? Those are the two hows we get every time. So do you want to discuss?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll start with financially because it seems to be like where what I'm most responsible for in the whole thing. And that is financially, I will say after 22 years of hardcore getting after it in terms of booking jobs as a freelancer, Denise will tell you, I've only had maybe 3 or 4 periods of downtime in those 22 years.
That's accurate.
1 or 2 of them was on purpose, but a couple were not. Other than that, I've been on this paper chase for so long. So
okay, he's legit a workaholic. Like, just call it what it is.
I have a lot of kids, people, and it's a very expensive city. All right, so my rationale is that, but I want to basically take the next 2 months off or 3 months off, whatever that magic number is, until we get literally from Seattle to the Keys. And then I think at that point,
we're not going to take 3 months to get from Seattle to the Keys. We've just taken 6 weeks to do that. But it's only takes 6 weeks for us to do that. But you're saying you want to take 3 months off because guess what? We have many other things we're going to do.
Oh, yeah, we do. We do, for sure. So, yeah, I'm going to take a little time off for sure. And that, in terms of working remotely, has no bearing. I mean, literally, that's going to be on the liability side of the financial spreadsheet.
But how are we able to do this? Because we're not independently wealthy.
No.
Again, I've stressed it. We're not millionaires or even close to it. So you have to have a financial game plan as to how are you going to travel. And the goal is that he wants to be retired for semi-retired 6 months. He wants to work 6 months off. So how can a person or a couple like ourselves who are just average people with 3 kids all in college who don't make $1 million, how are we going to work only 6 months out of the year? And how are we getting to all of these places? Are we flying? Are we driving? What are we doing? So back to finances. how did we do it? How are we
Okay.
funding this?
Well, a couple things. First off, our oldest daughter is no longer on the payroll. She graduated college. She's the most expensive kid by far. And she has a job working in Corpus Christi. She hasn't asked me for money in over 3 weeks. It's been amazing.
That's okay.
So
that's the longest.
it is the longest.
Oh my gosh.
So
Okay.
first off, we have 4 people that we're providing for, so that helps. We have one less person, right? We still have 2 that we need to get through college. The biggest thing is we sold our house, and we decided we could have tried to hold on to our house in the LA market, which is nuts. Everybody will tell you there's a housing shortage, real estate prices, even with interest rates currently at the time of this recording, rising and threatening to rise again. It doesn't matter. It's a limited inventory in a place where a lot of people want to move or raise a family or have a house, basically. So we basically put our house up on the market and decided with the proceeds of the house, we're going to be debt free. That's the biggest thing for me. I obviously still have to pay for my other 2 to get through college and whatnot, but I can do that on my income if I have a smaller mortgage and no debt. So that's kind of our picture at the moment.
And we did discuss that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, you and I should share with the audience that he and I did go back and forth because the other option was renting our home. We can get a good dollar for it if we Airbnb it. But for us, financially, it didn't give us the freedom that we wanted. So everybody is different. But when you look at something like this and you want to try to do something like this, you have to figure out financially how can you do it. And for us, it was selling our biggest asset, which was our home.
Yeah, for sure. And so we were basically
spending money to make money.
We were basically putting money into our house to beautify it after all those years, just so somebody else could enjoy it. But the eye on the prize for us was we'll have no credit card debt. We have no car payments. We will only have to pay for our 2 daughters' tuition. And eventually we'll have to pay for what we hope will be a much smaller mortgage in another place. And, somewhere where our kids are sort of accessible to us by an hour drive or an hour or 2 flight, at least regionally close to our children. So the proceeds from the house paid off all our debt, and will also pay for our travels, our little jaunts around the country for a couple months.
And for you to be semi-retired for as long as you want to be.
Yeah.
And for me to not go back to, I own a business. I'm going to take a pause on that. I still have a lease, but my lease is very manageable. So I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, but I made it manageable enough where I can travel with him, sell my home, and figure out my lease later. So for us, selling the house worked in our favor. Now, we don't recommend that for every person because maybe you don't have the debt, or maybe you have other avenues of income that won't be an option. You don't have to sell your house. You can rent it.
If you were good boys and girls and you didn't go into debt like we did, early
we had a lot of fun.
I mean, we did have a lot of fun early in our marriage, just getting into debt. And so, not so much fun in the past decade trying to get out of it, but the sale of the house was sort of the icing on the cake that allowed us to finally knock it all out once and for all. So making headway is great, but you have to be patient, and it takes time that we didn't want to spend anymore. We'd rather spend that time on the road. So
that is very true. We didn't want to spend any more time. I mean, a friend of mine actually said, wow, you're so young. You still have several years of work in you, and you could always get a better price for your house 5 years from now. Why would you wait? When she said that, it was immediately I knew James and I had made the right decision on selling our home, because the thought of waiting 5 more years, what if I get sick? What if I hurt myself?
People never do it. You say, oh, I'm going to do it in a couple years, and they never, ever do it.
And how much more am I going to get from my house in 5 years? I mean, a couple $100,000? No way. I want to get started with my life. So for us, this worked. This just worked for us. We sold our home, and we are going to take the proceeds and spend our time traveling, checking out all the states, maybe even other countries along the way to see where
Yeah.
we want to live. So that's
And there'll come a point where, you know, I'll like raise the red alert and say, okay, it's time to go back to work and start earning. So that'll happen within a few
right,
months.
because the money will run out eventually. It doesn't
and
last forever.
I don't, you know, we also, we have the opportunity to actually have money saved and working for us now after the sale. So
It is true.
obviously we don't want to just rifle through it.
No, we do not. We
It's
absolutely,
some
that is not the
saloon in
goal.
Tennessee somewhere. So
That would be fun.
it would be a blast, but I mean, come on.
But yeah, we still have to be responsible as hard as it is. Because I
Yeah.
don't want to be responsible. I really don't. But we have to be.
Yes, I've already got the fallback line. Like I've got the, what do they call it when the fire line? I've got the fire line.
He does.
And so
He does.
when we start approaching that, you know, I will be more inclined to take jobs again.
But what's
And-
the beauty of this is that he can just reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you have any work? And that work could be 3 weeks or 3 months. And he can decide. So we can literally look
Yeah.
at our finances and say, all right, if we want to travel a little bit longer, I may have to stop down in Budapest. I may have to stop down in Indiana.
realize that was on the list, but all
In
right.
Indiana,
Okay.
or whatever,
I like Indiana.
and
Indiana's-
and just work for a few months. But that's okay because we'll be in a different state and we can meet the locals and we can look at
Yeah.
properties. I mean, there's so many great things that we can do during that time if he has to put in a few hours.
It's just an excuse to stay in Iowa City for a few weeks instead of a few days.
It's
you know?
true. Yes.
And really, you know, when you're going to make a sort of choice on what your new situation is going to be in a new hometown, you kind of need to be there for more than a day or two. So the whole work live thing that we're going to attempt in all these different towns,
It's true.
cities all over the world.
You can be a tourist, but to really get a feel for a city, you have to be a
Yeah.
local for a little while.
You need a little time to fall in love, I think.
So we addressed the how we made this happen for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves financially. Now the question is, which everyone asks us after the how financially, is how physically, like how are you going to move your entire house around the country? What are you going to do? Are you going to get an RV? I get that question all the time. Are you going to tow like your furniture? What are you doing and how are you doing it?
Well, okay. So for starters, you have provided the how we're going to get out of this house by making sure that there was a pod in the driveway. So that's being delivered. We will load up that pod. We are sending it to your brother's house
My poor
in
brother.
Florida.
I think I should call him and let him know.
Yeah, you should. We know we're going to go to the Keys, which means we're eventually going to travel through Central Florida. That's where Denise's brother lives. So rather than hiring movers who break all your things and where you have to show up at exactly the moment the truck rolls up, we don't have a destination at the moment for them to roll up to. So pods.com, they'll truck it across the country for you and even store it in a warehouse until you arrive to get your things. So that's what we've decided to do while we're sort of meandering around the country.
He left out the most important part. What are we bringing with us?
Oh, what are we bringing with us? We're selling everything, people. We are selling everything. We're bringing our bed. We're bringing some things
Our clothes?
We're bringing some things my kids drew in like 3rd grade. We're bringing my guitars, which I hardly ever get a chance to play. What else are we bringing?
Clothes? I know. That's it.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Literally,
I don't know.
He's talking about...
I could fit all my clothes in my roller bag. So other than a few suits, I hope we don't get invited to any weddings by some of the town folk we meet along the way. But if we do, then I will definitely be a little underdressed because I'm not bringing any of that
It's
stuff with me.
true. We're not bringing anything. We're not even bringing our cars. So
No.
we're selling everything. We're selling every piece of furniture minus our one bed because it's only a couple years old. We bought it right before the 2020.
Guys got to sleep, you know.
And we're bringing our important papers. That's it. That's all we are bringing. We are getting rid of everything.
Yeah. Well, you kept the KitchenAid, so.
I know. That was expensive.
My aunt is really happy you did that, Aunt Janet. She said she would take it with her wherever she went.
And
so,
I kept the Williams Sonoma waffle maker
Okay, go.
because that was another really
Yeah,
nice.
that was my birthday gift was having to make waffles for the kids every time they have somebody over. But anyway,
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
are putting our important papers, our clothing, and our bed in a pod.
yeah. And
And-
we've already given tons of stuff away to the mission. We have friends that are coming to help us this weekend. Aaron and Brett, thank you so much, to
Yay.
help us sell off some of this stuff, the remaining stuff.
Like our
The kids are
couch.
going to be crying next week. There's going to be nowhere for them to sit. There's going to be no television for them to watch.
They can cry while they're sitting on
Euphoria
a beach
on
in
or whatever.
Greece. Okay?
Yeah,
they
yeah.
can be crying while they're sitting on a beach in Greece in 6 months.
I know, right? So that's kind of, that's how we're getting out of LA. So I guess that's the most important thing. And then
But we don't have our cars. We're
we
selling
don't have
our
our
cars,
cars.
too. So how are we getting from Los Angeles to Seattle?
okay, we're renting a van because
Minivan.
we're renting a minivan. It's the only way we can fit our daughter, her stuff she needs to take to college, our stuff we need to take to do podcasts, in addition to just our regular things that we need to do when we're traveling around. Oh, and by the way, we're taking our 80-pound boxer with us. So everybody who has been asking me at parties or at final farewell get-togethers, yes, we are taking the dog. We are not monsters. Wherever I go, she can tell you that dog comes too. So
It is
the dog
pretty
is
funny
coming.
when people ask, are you taking the dog?
Yeah.
What am I going to leave the dog?
Yeah. No, we're going to take her to the pound. Like, what do you think? And so, although, in fairness, the reason they ask is because there are jerks who do that kind of thing.
It's
So
terrible. But we would not do that to poor Roxy.
No
we
way.
love her. Okay, so really quick, I get this question constantly, and maybe you can answer it for our viewers, listeners. Why are we not doing an RV?
we're not really RV people. I mean, you're kind of like for the time that I've known you, you've always booked like sort of like you can have a fancy hotel and you're great there, but you're really like you chase these one of a kind hotels.
I do.
You really do. And so why would we not want to experience all those
Agreed.
along the way? I remember when we got married, our honeymoon was in this quaint bed and breakfast that you took me to. And so for me personally, I like a great Airbnb. I don't always luck out. I've had a few bad ones, but for the most part, I've gotten pretty good. Denise will tell you I'm amazing when it comes to Yelp reviews and like studying the algorithm of a particular restaurant. I'm approaching that level on Airbnb. I have a little ways to go yet, but we will trend toward those two things. One-of-a-kind hotels and Airbnbs. Sleeping in an RV doesn't feel good to us.
It wasn't appealing at all. I mean, I know they're beautiful RVs and no, like I wasn't even, I'd rather honestly just get the minivan and go from hotel or Airbnb rather than doing an RV. I'm not an RV person. There's no way. I just am not into it.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, and
you're really limited in RV. You get stuck in
you
RV
are,
parks.
and
I want to explore a city.
It's just been done so many times on like YouTube, and like I appreciate the younger set that wants to like renovate an RV and go out on the road, and like that's all cool and that's great, but the people we hang with, I can't really think of too many people that would do that beyond a 4 or 5 day trip,
Agreed.
So we're trying to hit a much different demographic because we are a different demographic. I like to wake up in the morning while you're still snoring and walk to get a cup of coffee and breathe in the air in a new city. I've done it in San Diego. I've done it all over the country. And that's how one of my best mornings traveling, I bring up San Diego, is because, you and the kids were kind of sleeping or milling around or getting ready or what have you. And I woke up, I got a cup of coffee, just started walking around the city. And before I realized it, I was at the very back of Petco Park where the Padres play. And I was like, the city's amazing. Like, this is so great. And it's only 7:30 in the morning and there's nobody here. And so for me, that's just kind of like,
and you can't do that if you're in an RV
you can't
park.
do that. Yeah. I mean, you're just going to be, you're going to hit another trail or you're going to be walking past other RVs. And I think ultimately we will find some sort of lodges at state parks. I know of a really good one.
Yay,
I just did the drive from Boise to Corpus Christi to move our oldest down there for her job. And we actually stayed at a funky little place in Fort Davis, but the owners were amazing. We got into town after dark, after all the sidewalks had rolled up, and these people scrounged and found food for us that they were going to serve for breakfast the next morning, just to make sure we had something to eat that night.
Those are the places I want to discover with you.
Yes.
I mean, honestly,
And so-
that's the whole idea of doing this, is to discover cool people and cool places. We're going to start in Los Angeles.
We're going to start in Los Angeles. We're going to hit Northern California somewhere. I have a personal friend, Russell, who is who's already made the jump, moving out of Los Angeles, and has still been able to work living out of rural Washington. He lives just over the river from Portland. And he's been doing it for, I'm guessing, I would be putting words in his mouth, but I'd say at least 5 or 6 years now. Loves it.
Well before the pandemic.
Bought a drone, shows off the drone in his amazing hometown. And so I can't wait to meet with him. We're going to meet with him along the way. And then we will get our daughter to Seattle. I'm in charge of planning Seattle. You get Salt Lake City.
Yes. So our stop after Seattle, I think we're going to spend 10 days in Seattle, and then we will head over to Salt Lake City, Utah. That will be our second stop. We're going to help our second daughter on our second stop move in to her new
Middle
apartment.
child syndrome.
We try not to treat her like a middle child, though. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we
She's
do,
the smartest one by far. So
Oh
she
my
is.
gosh, the other two would
She
just
is.
die.
She knows.
Okay, but so we are going to help her move into her apartment. She is moving out of her college dorm, and we will spend another probably 10 days there in Utah, and I will plan the Utah visit. So I'm excited about that.
And then from there,
I have some ideas.
And then from there, we have a list of places: Santa Fe, Sedona. Obviously, we want to hit as many cities in Texas. I've never been to
because we're
Dallas.
heading to Texas, so we are going to be heading
We
to
do
Texas.
have to go visit daughter number 1. We're going to end up in Corpus Christi after hitting the Houstons, the San Antonios, the Austins, the Dallases, maybe even a sneak through El Paso. We'll see how that goes. And then after spending some time with her, we're looking at winding around. I personally want to hit Oklahoma City. You've never been to New Orleans. I have. I can't wait for you to taste the food there and just watch the look on your face, because it's amazing. And just get the vibe there. A little Zydeco for everybody. Be fun. And then sort of eventually wind our way around the Panhandle, around the Gulf. And then, like I said, we have to check on our stuff at some point in Central Florida. And, oh, by the way, we'll go golfing with your brother and sister-in-law, my sister-in-law, around that time. And then eventually we're going to drag them down. I got a couple spots I want to hit in Miami. And I think we're going to actually try and get to the Keys for a couple weeks and drag them with us. So
yeah, so
a lot planned. And then we have Mexico after that. But that's for another episode.
So the start will be LA, and I have given us collectively, we've talked about it, 6 weeks to make it from Los Angeles to Central Florida. And, I think that should give us enough time. I mean, this is the first time James and I have ever done this, so we're learning along the way. But I think 6 weeks should give us plenty of time to hit all the cities that we want to hit from Los Angeles to the Keys of Florida.
Yeah. And really, I mean, that should all give you a great sense of who we are, where we're coming from. We hope you like us. We hope you want to see us or give us tips. It's been sort of a wondrous thing putting this podcast together, and really the genesis was just a few friends who are already doing podcasts. We'll get into them later, and they're kind of big names, but
Just a little.
but we're going to tease you with that, and we'll actually be making an appearance on one of their shows soon enough. But in the meanwhile, we've just been so inspired that people are inspired by us talking about it and doing it. And so it's like, now I feel like I'm sort of wearing their uniform as we march into every little town, and just sort of their hopes and dreams of what they would expect, Santa Fe to be like, or what have you. And obviously, we're going to be taking tips and recommendations. And if you have any bizarre sort of, experiences or tourist traps or what have you that you absolutely think we should check out. I've never been to Roswell. I've heard weird things. And so maybe.
Are we going to Roswell?
Maybe. I don't know. We haven't figured out who's playing in New Mexico yet, but we'll get to that. And just, hit us up. You can find us at skiptownallstars.com. And you can find this podcast anywhere on Apple, Spotify, all the majors. And we look forward to bringing you more episodes. I'm going to wrap it up for myself. But if you have parting thoughts, I'd love for you to share what our listeners have in store for them in the coming weeks and months.
Well, you have in store for you all of our mishaps, because there's going to be quite a few. All of our great experiences, because I'm hoping there will be many.
Yeah.
So basically, I just want to share with everyone kind of the do's and don'ts in our travels, because we've never done this. So this is something new. We're not travel experts. We're literally two parents hitting the road. And I can't wait for us to share with you our next adventure, which is going to be getting this pod.
Loading the pod is going to suck. So we'll see.
We only have our clothes and papers. How hard can it be?
We don't. I mean, we said that, but I don't think that's true.
We'll see.
I'm looking around. Anyway, we will catch you guys next week. Thank you for joining us. We hope you stick with us, because there's a lot to come. I promise.
Bye.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.